100 years ago, Reykjavik was not the thriving city it is today. With only 12,000 inhabitants, it was one of the gloomiest and poorest capitals in Europe. Its handful of streets were lit by less than 100 lamps, which must have had very little effect on those long, dark winter days. Living standards were low indeed. The water delivery man also cleaned the outdoor lavatories, and who knows whether he washed his hands in between. No one could have guessed that in the course of just 100 years, Reykjavik would blossom into a modern city with one of the highest living standards in the world. The reason for the dramatic change? Fish. The Icelanders' new national motto, "In cod we trust." But things literally heated up a little too much when the largest hotel in Reykjavik caught fire one night in 1915, just after a wedding. Most of the guests fled in panic, while a heroic few tried to douse the flames. But all in vain. Most of the centre of town was incinerated. This was a disaster, but one that spawned optimism. Reykjavik was redesigned and rebuilt almost overnight. New businesses sprouted up, many of them still in operation. At about the same time, Denmark granted Iceland home rule. The nation had its own flag, and the capital had a new look. Perhaps God had blessed Reykjavik, but it was the fishing fleet that brought it wealth. When the Graf Zeppelin made its way here in July 1931 on its world tour, it seemed that Iceland was finally on the map. There was prosperity like never before. But, like the Icelandic weather, that was to change in an instant. The Great Depression struck. The Depression reignited disputes between the right and left and led to furious debates. These ideological differences reached a peak in 1932, where labourers clashed with police in the centre of town in the famous Gultó demonstration, and the labourers won. But this victory did not stop the recession, and over the next few years, everyone faced hardship. But yet again, disaster brought prosperity. World War II, which ravaged most of the rest of Europe, provided Icelanders with another opportunity to rebuild. First came the British, then the Americans, and everything began to change. The sight of so many men in uniform had a profound effect on the Icelandic female population, much to the scorn of Icelandic males. The troops brought many exciting commodities such as gum, nylon stockings, and last but not least, rock and roll. Fish and wool suddenly seemed a little dull in comparison. When the war ended, it was clear that NATO intended to stay, and an American military presence was established in Keflavik. The cafe here on the right, known as Hressingaskálin or Hresso, used to be the meeting place for poets and artists during the war years. Here they would engage in heated discussions about free verse, the new novel, capitalism, communism, Americans, art, you name it. Among the regulars was Iceland's Nobel Prize novelist Halldór Laxness. But while some were clashing over their views, others were proclaiming peace. New life, new colours, new music. The hippies had arrived in town, and their message was, "Love and peace, man." They had no regard for materialism, and it was they who really opened Iceland up to outside influence. Of course, the 80s changed all that. Folk songs gave way to glam rock. Peace and love sounded a little old-fashioned. Iceland's image changed accordingly. Now its strong men and beautiful women stood in the international spotlight. Jón Páll Sigmarsson became the world's strongest man, and Icelanders claimed 2 Miss World titles in 3 years. Looking good was looking good. The generation that grew up seeing strong men and beauty queens everywhere had to make some deeper impression. A new kind of Viking appeared, determined, stylish, and interested in making money abroad. These financial Vikings, as the Icelanders called them, quickly built a reputation more fearful than their forebears. But their fall from power came much quicker. As soon as the game was up, people rose in indignation and demanded basic human fairness and accountability. And that's where we are now. Just as the Great Fire of 1915 brought a new beginning, so the collapse of the banks led to self-examination and rebuilding.